Hi, Douglas V. Gibbs here, Mr. Constitution. Let's talk about constitutional sheriffs. I wrote an article about it, so I left the link for the article if you want the text in the area below where it gives you the information about this video. But also understand, I'm going to add stuff here that's not in the article, so the video is important too. All right, so first of all, before I get started, I want you to understand something. The U.S. Constitution is the law of the land. It is the rule of law. Constitutionalism is not something radical. It's not something that must be stopped. It must be something that let me back up, and you're going to be shocked when you see this. The left is actually afraid of constitutional sheriffs. They call it the threat of constitutional sheriffs. Now, this particular page was to recall a particular sheriff, Adam Fortney, and because he dares to be a constitutional sheriff. So before I get started on this, I want you to think about this, and I'll bring this back up at the end so that you know what I'm talking about here. Here's what it says: the threat of constitutional sheriffs. Across the country, a number of sheriffs have decided they should be the final arbiter of what is legal and whether a law will be enforced. Remember, these people believe in federal supremacy at all costs, that the federal government is supreme, regardless of what the Constitution says, regardless of what the people say, regardless of what the rule of law says, regardless of what common sense says. These sheriffs, they continue to read the item here. These sheriffs are specifically targeting laws focused on public health efforts, mask mandates, business operation restrictions, gun safety measures. If they believe it to be unconstitutional, they don't have to enforce it. We will get to that. So they actually had an event to discuss the threat posed by legal approaches to constitutional sheriffs and what everyday citizens can and must do to protect our communities from the irresponsible and undemocratic behavior of these sheriffs. We are not supposed to be a democracy. Rule of law is more important than the will of the people. Let me repeat that. The rule of law is more important than the will of the people. In a pure democracy, 51% can vote away the rights of the other 49%. If suddenly the will of people decided that everybody with green eyes should be arrested and deported from the country, should all of our law enforcement officials and politicians say, okay, well, that's what the people want. That's the rule. No. The rule of law is God's law, nature's law, what's right and wrong, and what the Constitution says. And what the federal government is doing, and what a lot of these states are doing, are unconstitutional. Our last line of defense against unconstitutionality is our democratically elected sheriffs, who are there to stand against tyranny. These people who are calling it a threat, they are supporting tyranny and telling the sheriffs they have to step down and just deal with it. So let's talk about constitutional sheriffs and who they are, what they are, and what they're supposed to be. Basically, the office of the county sheriff is not mentioned in the United States Constitution. It shouldn't be. For the sheriff is a local office. And the U.S. Constitution was written to create the federal government. Stop. Federal government was created to handle external issues, trade with other countries, maritime law, disputes between the states, anything that has to do with the union, like post office, things like that. All right? So local issues, local government, local sheriff, local government. None of the federal government's business. The United States government, the federal government, was not created to be involved in your local business, your life at all. It was created to handle external issues so that the state governments could handle the local issues, and county governments, and so on and so forth. All right, so it shouldn't be, for the sheriff is a local office, and the U.S. Constitution was written to create the federal government, and the office is attached to that government. However, absence of the mention of the county sheriff in the U.S. Constitution in no way diminishes the important responsibility the county sheriff has as the county's local constitutional officer and the citizens' last law enforcement guard against tyranny by higher governments. The Founding Fathers, okay, now we're going to go away from the article for a second. The Founding Fathers, once again, believed in localism. Local issues, local government. Local issues, local enforcement. External issues, federal government. State issues, state government. County and city issues, county and state government. County government, county issues, county enforcement, county sheriff. Okay. Back to the article. There are 3,081 county sheriffs across America. 3 states do not have county sheriffs: Alaska, Connecticut, and Hawaii. Alaska has no county governments. Connecticut has replaced sheriffs with a state marshal system. And in Hawaii, while there are no county sheriffs, they do have deputy sheriffs which serve in the sheriff's division of the Hawaii Department of Public Safety. Stop. Back to us. The sheriff's department is a locally created, locally controlled. It's a state issue. None of the federal government's business. He is independent from the federal government. And if a state decides they don't want to have a sheriff, they can make that decision. But it's a foolish decision because they are our last line of defense against tyranny. Rather than be hired or appointed, sheriffs are democratically elected to serve the people of his or her county. The sheriff is the highest ranking law enforcement officer in the county, and all law enforcement operations must go through the sheriff, including any federal operations within a sheriff's county. Therefore, the county sheriff is your last line of defense against the intrusion of unconstitutional or tyrannical behaviors by the federal government against the people. The oath of office taken as sheriff of a county is the same as the one taken by other peace officers, such as city police. It is also essentially the same oath that one might take entering into the United States military or to serve political office, except the sheriff's oath has a special caveat attached. The county sheriff is more than an officer of the law. The position of county sheriff comes great constitutional responsibility. The sheriff is both the highest ranking peace officer of the entire county and is the executive officer of the county, as a mayor is for a city or a governor for a state, or the president would be for the Union of States. And because the county sheriff is elected, the sheriff reports directly to the citizens of the county. Traditionally, the sheriff is a constitutional officer, and the duties, responsibilities, and authorities are not subject to legislation or federal intrusion. Only the citizens through constitutional amendment can diminish a sheriff's duties as a constitutional officer, which means it is the sheriff's obligation to support, defend, and honor the United States Constitution and the state constitution. The position of sheriff carries with it the trust of the people in that he or she will defend their constitutional rights against anyone who aims to disregard those rights. The sheriff is expected to exercise these powers honestly, and as the opinion in an early Wisconsin case in 1870 states, now it is quite true that the Constitution nowhere defines what powers, rights, and duties shall attach or belong to the office of sheriff. But there can be no doubt that the framers of the Constitution had reference to the office with those generally recognized legal duties and functions belonging to it in this country and in the territories when the Constitution was adopted. While the legislature may impose additional duties upon the sheriff, where he is recognized as a constitutional officer, it cannot restrict or reduce his powers or as allowed by the state constitution, or as they were recognized by the people when the U.S. or the state constitutions were adopted. During the founding of the United States, everyone clearly understood the duties, responsibilities, and authorities of sheriff. Therefore, it was not necessary to include a lengthy enumeration of their duties in the U.S. Constitution or the state constitutions. The office of the sheriff dates back to about 500 AD in England and existed in the colonies in America from the time they were created. The constitutional offices of sheriffs, coroners, and constables were clearly established in the state constitutions of that time and continue to this day. What this all means is that the county sheriff is the highest elected constitutional officer in the county. Therefore, not only is it the sheriff's obligation to protect the natural rights of the county's citizens, but that any outside agency, if they are to operate within a sheriff's jurisdiction, must seek approval from the county sheriff first. In this time of expanding governments and unchecked powers by executives and members of judiciaries, there has been a force in place unlawfully working to eliminate or at least minimize the office of the sheriff and or their duties, responsibilities, and authority since the American War between the states. These attempts are null and void, for those agencies do not have such an authority. If a federal agency operates in a county conducting raids against a business owner or a private citizen, the conclusion is that either A, the county sheriff gave this agency permission to search and seize within the sheriff's jurisdiction, or B, the agency acted without the sheriff's permission, creating a constitutional crisis which obligates the county sheriff to arrest the members of the federal agency who conducted the aid inside the sheriff's county. In this age of a federal government expanding its reach unconstitutionally into domestic realms, it is appropriate and vital that the county sheriffs defend their counties, taking appropriate action, which may include and perhaps even extend beyond the local arrest of any offending federal officials, agents, officers, or politicians for operating beyond their constitutional authorities. Understand that the purpose of the U.S. Constitution is a proper distribution of power, and that too much power was not to belong in any one place. The president is not supposed to have too much power. The Congress, the judiciary, the states, the federal government, the counties, or the people in the sense of a pure democracy. Nowhere is all of the power or most of the power distributed because of the danger of tyranny, of the danger that power would be used in a tyrannical manner. And there are checks and balances against each and every piece of power. For the people in the House, the check against the people were the U.S. Senate, where the states appointed the senators. That has been taken away. The power against the federal government, taxing us until we were completely broke, was guarded against by the states being a mediator between us and the federal budget. And the 16th Amendment changed that and allowed the federal government to directly tax us. Now they want to get rid of the constitutional sheriffs, the last line of defense between us and unconstitutional activities by higher governments. He is our check. He is our check and balance. He or she, as sheriff, is the one that's supposed to defend us against tyranny. Well, that in the Second Amendment. So if we have a tyrannical federal government acting in a manner that's against the Constitution, that's not the rule of law. That's going against the rule of law. That's the rule of man. And it's constitutional sheriff's job to disregard unconstitutional laws. So when you see this garbage about the threat of constitutional sheriffs and how it is being argued that they're not supposed to be standing between us and tyranny, if they're supposed to just be following what they're dictated to. Even in the military, you are able to not follow an unlawful order. The sheriffs are our person that can say, hey, that's an unlawful order. That's unconstitutional. I will not enforce it. That's what the sheriffs are for. Now understand, not all sheriffs are constitutional. Not all of them understand what their job is. You need to pay attention to yours. And if they are not standing between you and tyranny at the state level or the federal level, like mask mandates and so forth, then you need to make sure they get replaced with a constitutional sheriff. The sheriff is your final line of defense against tyranny from the federal and state governments. But if your sheriff is not a constitutional sheriff, that role doesn't matter. The authority doesn't matter. They have to be willing to carry it out. And that's what we're up against. So support your constitutional sheriffs. Understand what a constitutional sheriff is. And fight to make sure you have a constitutional sheriff. And don't listen to this garbage of the threat of constitutional. Our sheriff is our check and balance against tyranny at upper level tyranny from the federal government, the state. Our county sheriff is our last line of defense against tyranny. And it is their job to say, you know what? That's unconstitutional. That's unjust. That's not a proper law. It goes outside the rule of law, outside the laws of nature and of nature's God, and I will not enforce it. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. And if you want to learn more about me, DouglasVGibbs.com, politicalpistachio.com. Donate, subscribe, Actually, it's, yeah, over here somewhere. Be sure to subscribe to this channel, whichever channel you're watching. I'm on YouTube and BitChute. And I appreciate you watching this one, and I'll see you next time with my next video.